it.
But it's funny what we also I guess expectations around it too, because you and I talk about storytelling a lot, and I remember when I was working at Kronborg Castle in Elsinore, in just north of Copenhagen, which is known as the home of the Hamlet's castle, the home of
Mm,
Hamlet, and Shakespeare heavily based that play on Kronborg Castle and Elsinore, and we know that the King's Men were there. We don't know if Shakespeare were there, but we know that there were visiting actors, and a lot of the time, tourists coming to Kronborg came for Hamlet, even though
mm,
he's a fictional character, even though there's never been a Prince Hamlet of Denmark. But that was the reason why they came. So you have, from a historic point of view, this is a Renaissance castle and a fortification, and with its own history, built by a Danish king. And you have all that history to interpret and tell, but you also have the fictional side of the story, which is Shakespeare's world. And we kind of did what we could to try and merge those two. But it's funny when theater or fiction becomes almost messed up in reality and in history in that way. There's something very fascinating about that, because in a way we were also trying to honor Shakespeare's work and the fact that this was written around the same time Kronborg Castle was built. Hamlet was written around 1600. Kronborg Castle was built in 1580, or stood finished in 1585. So this was a time of traveling actors and that kind of thing. Um, but it is a funny thing from a historical point of view, and especially for you and I working in museums, when those fictive elements start to seep in to what you do and into the interpretation and into the storytelling of what you do. But it reminded me very much of this movie where you have those two worlds sort of slowly just coming together and overlapping each other all the time.
yes, and I think that's a really important point, Jane. And I think that popular culture, both historical and present day, we're certainly living in a time where, well, I suppose in Shakespeare's day, narrating history through plays was probably the only exposure most ordinary people got to an understanding of their own history in terms of storytelling. And today we often use stories as gateways. So I have seen they're doing this at my daughter's school, and I've seen this done in museums as well. It is almost impossible to talk about themes. I'll pluck the closest example I can think of. Piracy. You
Yeah.
can't discuss pirates without Pirates of the Caribbean
So
popping up in there somewhere. And, while there are, as far as we know, almost certainly no undead pirates out there, but, these films have had such an impact that
yeah.
they tend to sort of percolate into any discussion of what piracy was like in real life. And
That's a brilliant example, and not being funny. Those movies have also sparked quite a few documentaries around piracy.
yes, yes, they have. Yes, quite a few good ones. You pointed me in the direction of
And you did a
one.
brilliant. I'm just gonna put people's attention on your brilliant podcast there, Andrew.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, the Pirates one.
We
Thank
should
you
we
very
should
much.
link to that somehow. Yes, we.
Yes, I had the great pleasure of talking to Dan Snow, and it was awesome, awesome. I didn't get his autograph, which was stupid of me. I know. What was I think? I think I was too overwhelmed, but oh my God, it's Dan
But
Snow.
that podcast is so worth a listen, and you shine a light on piracy in the East, which is not something we know a lot about. And oh my God, is there a lot of stuff to get your heads around? It's the kind of stuff that movies are made of. So I don't understand why we don't get more Eastern pirate films.
No, me neither. Hollywood needs to touch it. I
Yep,
mean, much in the same way that Hollywood, by touching Shakespeare in this
yep,
particular way, among the many other ways it's touched him in the past, has, kept him and his work so fresh in the
yep.
popular consciousness today. I think it's and I mean, this was amazing. Do you know, I can't actually remember. I know there have been a couple, but I can't actually remember any Shakespeare films that have come out since this one. And that's no reflection on them. It's just I think that Shakespeare in Love was such a fine film
Yeah, no,
that it stays in the mind in a way the others don't.
and I think maybe also some of the more, because if I go back to, some of the Kenneth Branagh productions, which was usually a little bit earlier in the 90s, like he did Much Ado, he did Henry V,
Mm,
Love's Labour's Lost. They followed the script quite well and didn't really deviate an awful lot. And his
mm,
Hamlet, long as it was, didn't deviate much either. So it was a very sort of clear take on Shakespeare scripts as they were. And there is a very specific audience for that. So I think actually what Shakespeare in Love managed to do was to draw more people into the world of Shakespeare from a romance comedy kind of perspective. And no matter how you look at it, no matter how fictive this was, it's that's not a bad thing, is it?
No, no, it's not, and I think again a balance here as they struck a perfect balance with so much else with this film, dropping in just enough original material for the Shakespeare fans to go, oh yeah, saw what you did there, but without overwhelming the casual viewer with too much Shakespearean jargon, because they can experience all
Yeah,
that once they get into him. Note I say once they get into him rather than if.
very good,
This
very
film
good.
has served its purposes very well. But yeah, no, I'd oh gosh, I wasn't sure where I was going to go next on this thread. What have we not talked about yet?
There was one character we haven't talked about, and she would be very offended by that, the Queen.
The Queen, yes, we've forgotten Her Majesty. I must do the bow and yes. Oh, yes, and remember if we're am I male or female today? With curtsy, bow,
Yeah,
curtsy.
yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, that was
I'm
very good.
waiting,
Yeah.
Master Kent.
I
Um,
don't think we it's not written anywhere that she ever went to rehearsals. I don't think she did, but she did
hmm.
have quite a few plays set up for her.
Yes, she was quite fond of them from what I understand. And I think the one thing that's true in the film is apparently she really did like comedies. She
Yes.
she was a quite a fan. I do love the opening scene at I think it's meant to be it's either Hampton Court Palace or one of
Yeah.
the others where she's loving the comedy and then one of Shakespeare's ones comes on. She's just sitting there deadpan and then starts falling asleep, which is not good.
And she commends the dog. That's
Yes.
the Oh, very good, very good. Yeah, no, that was a wonderful, and of course it had to be Jane Judy who did that one. She's
Oh
one.
yes, yeah, Judi Dench. Yes, she do you know what? Picking up on what you said right at the beginning, where she makes that observation about I know what it's like,
Yeah,
donning a man's profession, and it was a very powerful line because she you get the faintest of glimpses in the film of what she has to deal with from people like Wessex.
yeah.
And although you don't really get to meet any of the rest of her courtiers, I like that when she's heading back to her carriage at the end, they're sort of looking there, looking a bit dim, and then they start taking their cloaks off. She just goes, "Never mind,
Too
we've lived
late.
forever." I'm just too late, too late. Yes, it must have been such an odd life
Yes,
being
yeah.
Queen Elizabeth, really,
And
and having to fend off foolish men who think that she'd be sobbingly grateful for an advantageous
and
marriage. And
a very peculiar line because in a way everyone did everything she ever wanted. So she could just issue a command and it would be done. And at the same time, I wonder how many times she found herself in a situation where she was not being taken seriously because of her gender.
mm,
So it was a peculiar, yes, Your Majesty, she's absolutely in total power, and she's got the right to judge whether or not a play can show the true nature of love. She'll be the judge of it, and she's taking that role upon herself. And at the same time, um, I wonder just how many times she found herself in situations where men thought they could maybe play her or show something to her that she would just buy without question. I guess it had to make you very perceptive being in that kind of role.
Yes, yes, and I think I feel during her career she did have to occasionally, well, no, probably more than occasionally resort to a bit of manipulation herself. There's the various close friendships she has with people. In some cases, they're genuine, or as much as you can have between monarch and noble subject. But I noticed that there are some, saying this as someone who does not know the period well at all, where she does form these apparent close friendships with men who are hopeful of gaining her hand, but she just keeps them going in the friend zone for as long as she can. And if after a while they start complaining too much, she just drops them, sometimes quite violently in
Yeah.
one or two cases.
Yeah. Or did,
I mean, I think she was left with no choice because you're right. The attitude some of these men had, they would have been Wessexes in real life, thinking,
yes.
well,
Yeah.
this is good for me. Obviously, I marry into the throne, but Majesty, being a simple woman, will be glad of someone rich and powerful like myself to become her guardian and carer and lord and master as well. Let's not forget. That's
Obviously, obviously, yeah. No, but no, peculiar and probably yeah, a much more difficult time to be a woman in a man's profession than it ever has been ever since. But yeah, no, she was played really well. She was played really well. The great Dame Judy. Yeah. Andrew, what haven't we touched on?
I think we've covered pretty much. I mean, it's obvious, guys. It's probably obvious that we love this film, and if you haven't watched it,
Go.
watch it because
It's
it's
so worth it.
amazing. Yeah, I mean, there was only one small thing I wanted to pick up on, and that's another smaller part, and that's Simon Callow being
Oh
Sir
yes.
Edmund Tilney, and I like the way he was handled in this film. It's just enough to keep him funny, but he's also one of the foreboding characters who could mess things up. But I think I know why they did it, but I feel they only showed one side of him because yes, his job was to censor plays and to make sure there was no lewdness and
Yeah.
no stuff that would upset Her Majesty, who, having given her royal permission for these things to go on, there have to be standards maintained. But he also, I believe, was quite instrumental in helping to develop the world of Elizabethan theatre. And it would have been nice if there could have been a hint of that, but I understand why there isn't, because in a film that's already so busy with characters, he's in the film to do one job, and they've
Yeah.
got to keep him on that particular
But
track.
it is, I'm glad you're flagging that, Andrew, because in a way, in that final scene where he's stopping everything and he's going, I'm arresting everyone, in a way, he is just doing his job there because that was his job to make sure
Yes.
that everything went on in a perfectly correct kind of way. So in a way, he is actually just doing his job in that scene, although a little bit clumsy, but he's doing it.
Yes,
I,
yeah, he's just being single-minded about it. But yeah, I mean, he would have been in serious trouble if he'd let
yeah.
that sort of thing go on without trying to shut it
But
down.
you're right. You're right. That's if there had been an extended version, we could have had a scene with Till.
Yes, where he's sitting down with his wife afterwards that evening, goes, "Do you know what? I'm actually glad they let that continue. It was pretty good. It would have been a shame to have shut it down." Yeah, this
And,
Shakespeare guy might go places.
and of course, it had to be Shakespeare in the role of Romeo and Violet in the role of Juliet. It had to end up that way.
It did. They couldn't have ended it any other way. I would have been slightly disappointed if they had, although I would have given them marks for a surprise curveball there. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hilarity when Viola's having to rehearse with the guy whose voice
Yeah,
breaks, because then you just get complete gender swap, and it's almost a bit weird.
that's very,
And it
very.
leads to the scene where she forgets to take her facial hair off
Yes,
before
yes.
Wessex
Oh,
comes in.
I felt that when the nurse ripped that off. I felt
The
that.
sound, I was going,
Oh,
and
And the
I'm sure
judge,
they did it in a nice way that didn't hurt her, but just having her smile on after
and
that.
your top lip, it's so sensitive. You just
Oh, yes, please don't do that.
well, you just reminded me of
Mm.
something, Andrew, in that final scene with Romeo and Juliet dying. Um, a wonderful little notch as well to the beginning where it was all comedy and a bit with the dog and ha ha. When it finished and everyone was done, that complete silence, and
Yes.
everyone is like, what's going on? What, are they not? And then slowly it
Mm.
starts to that was beautifully done, beautifully, because it showed the two natures of theater and what it can be like. It can be all ha ha and funny and look, we're having a great time, and it can really hit you. And that's the power of theater and the power of the arts, generally speaking. So I loved that they had done that and they kept that in that little, and then the relief starts to,
Yes.
you
Yeah, I
know,
know the actors are really looking nervously at each other and going, did they hate it? This whole thing was a terrible idea.
do they not understand it's over?
Yeah, and again, a note of sympathy for actors because it
Yeah.
then as now, if you put so much of your heart and soul into something and it turns out to be a complete flop, and I think any actor or producer or anyone would be more than human if there wasn't that little bit at the back of their mind going, "What if everyone hates this?"
And I think that's, oh, you're hitting on something that I think it's the nerve of that particular career form, because it's direct payoff every single night. It's applause or no applause.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be a very special character to be able to live with that, because I fully understand why you can be addicted to it. That rush of, oh my God, people love me and it's fantastic. And at the same time, constantly that nervousness of what if I'm just really bad and people hate it. It's a very, very peculiar career form, but I also kind of get why a lot of film actors need to go back to the theater occasionally, because it centers you. There's something
Mm.
in the craft and in the arts form in itself that sort of centers you back in the core of it when you're on stage. Because you can't hide anything, you can't fake anything. You're on when you're on. The moment the
Yeah.
spotlight hits you, you're on.
Yes, and you get no safety net if someone yelling cut will do that again, and there's no degree of separation from you and your audiences. And yes, while you're right, I think you're absolutely right. While screen actors do work incredibly hard, it is good to be centered. And I do find it significant. I mean, in a film that is full of really big stars. I mean, the roster of this one on the cast list absolutely shines with awesome people. But so many, if not all of them, started off on the stage, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think there were any lucky break characters who went straight into film. All of them have had a Shakespearean background.
If you listen to interviews with like famous actors, they almost all of them have a story about a night on stage where things went badly wrong, where a sword cracked or someone fell over or whatever. And I think that's what in a way grounds you a little bit. Because what we also did at Kronborg Castle when we used actors in the roles of from Hamlet, and we acted out small scenes across the palace. So some in the courtyard, some in the great hall, some in the casemates, and we had the ghost obviously in the casemates and that kind of thing. Um, you have to play off the audience because they are immersed in this and they become part of it. And there will occasionally be a small child shouting out something, and you have
Yeah.
to be able to roll with that. And I think some actors are incredibly good at that, and others don't like it at all. And
Mm.
I do get both, but it's just a very specific area of that craft where you break that down, that fourth wall, and whether or not you're comfortable with doing it or not. And at the same time, you stay in character. At the same time, you need to respect and preserve the character you're playing. Um, so it's definitely not a simple thing to be able to do. But I do understand why occasionally, if you are an actor, that you need that grounding in the theater world again, where the payoff is direct, where you interact, where people are literally standing right there below your feet. I totally get why you need that thrill, don't you, occasionally?
Yes, you do. And it's nice for both parties, I
Yeah.
think, because in the loveliest possible way, it must be quite affirming if you're feeling a bit burnt out to do a theatre stint and people come along and enjoy themselves. And as you said earlier, you get that round of applause and it's a good feeling. And also it's nice for your fans because
Yeah.
if you know whether they're coming for the story or coming for you or both, it's great that they actually get to see you in the flesh rather than
Yeah.
projected on a screen. And
And you do get to see on stage, you do get to see why some actors are in a class of their own. You just do because again, there's no hiding. You can't sort of fake being bad if it's not your night. And I think that's the wonderful thing about theatre as well. I remember the very first time I went to see Ray Fiennes, which was in a Henrik Ibsen play, and I was very, very skeptical because being Scandinavian, I was never a huge fan of Ibsen. It was very heavy, very dark. We were forced to read him at school, and I went to see him at the Old Vic in The Master Builder. And I think from the moment he came on, you said that's that moment where you go, "Oh, look, Ray Fiennes," and then two
yes.
seconds later you forget he's Ray Fiennes because he is that role. He becomes that role.
Yeah.
And that's when acting is a craft that's not something everyone can just master.
No, it must be. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like I suppose having to step out of yourself, really,
Yeah.
because the great temptation is to make every role you're given a version of yourself. Some actors have got away with doing that in the
Yes.
past.
Yeah. Yeah. It does happen.
I
It does
mean,
happen.
fair play to them. If you can manage that, then life is actually that tiny bit
Yeah.
easier,
It does
generally
happen.
speaking. Um, yeah, no, there's a lot that I admire. I mean, a big one for me. I don't know if he ever did any Shakespeare, but Rod Steiger, the American actor, I
Oh, yes.
always remember him as Napoleon, and he's probably
Yes.
the most convincing Napoleon I've ever seen on
Oh, he's
stage.
wonderful.
Uh,
Yes. Yes. True. I don't know if he ever did Shakespeare. I don't know. He probably
No,
did.
I'll have to look at guys, if you happen to know, spare me a bit of, quick
Yeah.
Google research and tell me,
Yeah.
did Rod Steiger ever do any Shakespearean roles? I wouldn't be surprised if he did, but it'd be nice to know.
Oh, he's wonderful. You're right. You're right. And there's just some people who because it's not a lot of people say it's about the charisma and so on. And yes, a large part of it is obviously you need to be someone the camera loves or the stage loves, but a lot of it, as you say, Andrew, it's a wonderful way of putting it, is actually stepping outside yourself
Hmm.
and into another person, into another character. And that must be incredibly hard to do evening after evening after evening.
Oh, yes, yes. No, I can't imagine how they do it because I don't think I've got necessarily got the capability to do that.
It is,
But
and I fully understand if you occasionally just need a break because you need to be you again from.
Yes, yeah, we see. I mean, we drift into the realms of method actors
Yes,
now, don't we? Where just no, I'm just going to become this person, and it's terribly hard to come back from it, and or it must be terribly hard
yeah,
to step back out of it.
yeah. No, I also remember an interview with that was a Danish film director once who was quite famous in Denmark, and he said he always casted actors who was in roles who was the opposite of themselves because they needed something to play against, and he needed to keep them challenged. They needed to feel they
Mm.
were challenged, so he never cast actors who in roles who were very close to who they were themselves. He always
Right.
cast them in opposite roles. So if you needed to be, a charismatic like a businessman, he cast someone with a little bit of a subtle persona. Or if you needed to be a tough kind of woman with lots of things to say, he cast someone who might have been a little bit dismissive and a little bit, closed herself up. And it actually, very often for him, it worked very well because he gave them something that was a challenge to them. So he kept them on their toes. And I can fully see what he was doing. Can also see the risk. But in a way, it kind of made sense because if you're playing something that's totally not you,
Mm.
it's not only a challenge for you in terms of your profession, but it might also be easier to step out of it afterwards.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, yeah. And of
Yeah.
course, it gives you a boundary line to work to because you think, oh, that I'm beginning to play this a bit like me. So,
Yeah, yes, exactly. Exactly. No, I totally get that. Anyway, we are drifting off now, Andrew. Should we hand over?
I think we should. Yes, guys, you've sat there patiently listening to us dissect another film. We're always very grateful, and thanks so much
Yeah.
for anything you want to add. Have we missed anything?
Yes,
Was there something about this film that really grabbed you that we've had the temerity to not even mention?
that
Do
probably
do
is.
say.
Please do say, and also what did you think about this film? Was there a favorite scene, a favorite character? The soundtrack, whatever we haven't mentioned, do dive into it. It's a fantastic film. If you haven't watched it, go watch it, and let us know your favorite Shakespearean play.
Oh, yes, that's a fantastic question, Jane. Yes, favorite Shakespearean play, guys. There you go. That'll send you away thinking,
You
especially
have
if you're
one, Andrew.
Shakespeare
You
fans.
have one.
Um, do you know, I don't know if I do. I do tend to prefer his comedies.
You don't know. It's a mystery.
It is a mystery, yes. All the world's a stage. I mean, no, I can't think of one that shines above the. I have a handful of favorites, but
Yeah.
how about you, Jane? Do you have like a
Oh,
glittering play on the hill that?
likewise, I do have a weakness for Much Ado About Nothing simply because it was the first one I was capable of reading in English in the original language. Up until then, I'd only ever written Danish translations, but so I do have a tiny weakness for Much Ado About Nothing. I think it's a wonderful comedy and sort of word banter that's taking place. But no, it's you know you at the end of the day, Hamlet is probably the most well-known play ever written. No one hasn't heard of Romeo and Juliet, you know. Uh, um, Also, Roman plays are absolutely wonderful in their own right. I remember seeing a wonderful version of, I think it was Henry II a zillion years ago in London as well. That was absolutely wonderful. So no, it's difficult. There are he's very versatile and he is at the end of the day maybe the father of all good storytelling. There's a reason why we keep returning to Shakespeare, isn't there?
Yes, yes, and another mark of how, immediate and hard-hitting some of his stuff is. I have overheard conversations in my time of whether Titus Andronicus should be banned, at least from,
Yeah,
the ultra violence and ultra grimness of the whole business. So he didn't hold back with that one, did he?
there's quite a bit of violence going on. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
That's true. That is true. Oh, guys, let us know, and thanks so much for listening, and see you next time.
Yeah, and as always, Jane, thank you so much. It's been so
Thank you,
awesome,
Andrew.
as
Thank
always.
you. It's always awesome to see you, and take care, everyone.
You too. See you all. Take care, Jane.